Good afternoon, cardiologist here with the promised part 2 of the Giubo flex disc replacement project. Last time we replaced the rear flex disc. This time we're going to replace the front flex disc. So the first thing that I did, and I did this off camera, was to get the car similarly positioned to how it was the last time. Once again, I have landscape ties that go against the cement wall. Those support the ramps so that the ramps don't move forward as I drive onto them. With the front of the car held up by ramps, I then was able to raise the back of the car, and it's quite important to use jack stands. So I have jack stands. I have one here, one there, and then I just put one under the differential just in case things move. I tried to make the car as level as possible, but the key on this job is that the rear wheels have to be able to spin freely, and the reason is that we'll be having to rotate the drive shaft in order to reach all the screws of the flex disc. So the first step in this project is going to be to get underneath the car and remove the splash shield. This project is likely to test the limits of what cardiologist is able to do. You really need a lift for this. I don't have one, so that's just going to add another dimension to this. I'm going to get on my back and point this camera upward and try to give you a lay of the land here. The splash shields have been removed. This is the front flex disc. Just like the other one, it's kind of dried and not that flexible, and I'm sure there's some little cracks in here. In fact, I see one right here as I press. Do you see this? So, certainly has to go, but getting to this is going to be an absolute bear. I may have to take off portions of the exhaust system. I may have to take off portions of the heat shield. Yeah. So and I'm definitely going to have to take off the transmission mount, which I had replaced not that long ago. So we're going to just go through this one by one and take it from there. First thing I'm going to take off, I think, is this rear bracket. Give myself a little room so I can take off some of these heat shields. The whole idea is that once I get this off, I'm going to have to take the drive shaft, pull it back, and bring it down. So I have to give it some room to do that. If I can just squeeze out these heat shields, I may be able to do this without having to take off completely the exhaust system. So let's see what we can do. Okay, the first thing I'm going to take off is this cross member, which is running across the pipes going back to the car. This is a T45, and luckily that's not on very tight. So we'll take off 4 screws and that bracket. Okay, the cross member is off, and that is going to allow me to get access to some of these heat shields. And what I'm going to do is take off these nuts, which go off with an 8mm socket, and I'm going to try to get some of these heat shields rotated out of the way. Okay, so I got those screws off. Now, what I'm doing is trying to take off just these front 2 heat shields, okay? And now that they're loose, I'm just going to try to rotate them out without bending them or messing them up. And if I'm successful in doing that, I'll expose the whole drive shaft. That's the next step. Okay, I got these heat shields off, and I want to show you how you do it. They're in 3 pieces. So here, there are these bolts. So these bolts come in, and then it's going to, you see this bolt and this, and it just slides in. Slides in. If I can do it like that. So now that would be one piece, and then this also comes in here like this. So that is how the whole thing eventually goes together. Okay, but it does come out as 3 pieces. So now I got the heat shield out. Let's go underneath and see what it looks like now. Okay, so now that I can look up right at my center bearing, my drive shaft center bearing, And I'm trying to check this out. I have a feeling that this center bearing is shot. I am going to have to figure this one out. I have a bad feeling this is shot. I'm going to put the car in neutral and let's see, because this seems to be moving way too much, and I think it's supposed to be in there much more solidly, but we're going to find out in a second. Okay, so now the car's in neutral and I'm able to turn the drive shaft, but I don't know if you can see in here that this has play, and I don't think it's supposed to. So I need to research, because if this center bearing is gone, and it probably is after 200,000 miles, then I should stop what I'm doing, put the car back together, order the part that I need, and then continue this project once I have it. Now, 200,000 miles, I suppose this should be fixed too. Okay, this may definitely put a damper on things. I hope this is going to show. My hand is right on that center bearing just behind it. I'm going to push it up, and I want you to listen to this. You ready? I think that means it's shot. Yeah. If that's the case, then I'm not doing any other thing. I'm putting the car back together, and we're going to do the whole job at the same time once I have this new damper. I need to go do some research, and I'm pretty sure I already know what the answer is. So after a lot of thought and analysis, I've decided to proceed. I think that's supposed to have a certain amount of play, and I'm just going to try to proceed. I took off this center bracket right here. These were 13mm bolts. Now what we're going to do is just jack up with a wooden block the transmission pan a little bit, take some of the pressure off. We're going to take off the transmission mount, get it out of the way, and try to get this flex disc off. So let's do that. Okay, so the transmission pan is gently supported with a jack and a piece of plywood, and I have now removed the transmission mount, or the so-called rear engine mount. Next is this rear crossbar. Okay, so now we have the cross member off by taking these bolts over here, like this, and now we have much better access here to the flex disc. We're going to have to mark it so that the rotation stays the same, and then let's try to loosen up these and take this off. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. I wrapped this with painter's tape. I made a mark that says 1. I cleaned this off with brake parts cleaner, and I'm making a 1. Now I'm going to rotate this by hand because I'm still in neutral. I'm going to come to the next one like this. Okay, now right over here, I'm going to clean this off, mark it with a 2, and then put 2 over here. And we'll do that all the way around so that we know we have this lined up correctly. Okay, so 2 lines here, 2 lines here, rotate to the third, clean this with brake parts cleaner, put 3 lines here, put 3 lines here, then there's going to be no confusion about how to put this back together so that it's balanced. I want to show you how I'm doing this. I'm taking my T60, I put it in here, then I just rotate it. I'm still in neutral, and I'm rotating it until I can get at it with the 18mm wrench. Watch my wrench. Just rotate it a little bit more. Get the wrench in there. Gonna get hopefully the box end of it. Yep, there it is. Okay. And then just finesse it a little bit. Finesse it. Come on. There it is. Okay, so now I've got the wrench on it. Well, maybe I don't. I think we'll have to use the open end of the wrench. There. Now, with that on there, I can come like this, and there it comes. And that's how we take them off. Okay, all 8 are out. Now we're gonna get a pry bar and see what we can do to get this flex disc out. Okay, so with the pry bar, I got this right out. Now, right out like that. So now I'll just be able to lift off the flex disc and then put in the new one, and we will be good. Here, let's see. I can keep the camera on while I use my pry bar here and just try to get it out. It'll take 2 hands, and I don't want to hurt myself, so I'll be back in a sec. Okay, I pried everything out, and I got news for you. This one was actually easier than the back one, and I thought it was going to be the other way around. How about that? Alright, so there it is. One 200,000-mile Giubo flex disc. Let's go get our new flex disc and get this bad boy right in there. Okay, so one more time, I have a nice Febby Bilstein kit. We're opening this up. And let's see what we have in here. And there it is. Nice new one with all new hardware. Always remember, use your new hardware. And also remember that the nuts are the ones that actually touch the rubber section, whereas the bolts go on the metal. I have to use 3 ounces of this grease. This is the synthetic grease NLGI number 2, and that's what this car requires. So it's 3 on the front, 3 on the back. It basically means a good glob. Okay, grease applied. I don't know if we can see it. Yeah, we can see it. Grease applied. I put it on the outside. I also put it right here on the inside. Now it's time to put on our new flex disc. Okay, so the flex disc is back on. Now let's just look. I haven't put the screws in yet, but notice here I've rotated everything so it's nice and even. This is my mark number 1, which lines up with mark number 1. Right? Right. Now, as I'm going to rotate it, you'll see everything is still going to be good. Here is my mark number 2, which lines up with mark number 2. So now I can just put in the screws. Now here's what I was saying about the nuts. The bolt goes in where it touches the metal, then the other side gets the nut. But here, where there is no metal, this is where the washer would be. So on this side, it's the bolt with the washer and then the nut at the metal. On the other side, like here, it's going to be the bolt with no washer, and then on the other side, the washer and the nut. The washer always touches the flex disc itself. Okay, all the nuts and bolts are in and washers. Everything's lined up again. Here's my double mark here, my double mark here. Once again, bolt, washer touches the flex disc, whereas here, bolt, but there is no washer. The washer on there goes underneath the nut. Now what we're going to do is tighten these up to 60 Newton meters. I'll do it in a star pattern. And then I'll mark each bolt as I have it torqued to 60 Newton meters because these are M12s. Okay, so this is done. We have a new flex disc in place. It's been greased. The washers are just right. Everything's been torqued to 60 Newton meters. I took off the painter's tape. Everything is good. We are basically ready to start putting all this back together again. And I'm pretty happy with this job, I have to tell you. So let's start putting things back with the cross brackets and the transmission mounts and things like this. I'm going to clean them up first though. Here is the cross mount that holds the transmission. I'm going to clean this up with brake parts cleaner, make it nice, and then we'll put it back on the car. Okay, so we have the rear cross member back on. These bolts are 16 millimeters. These are torqued down to 50. There's 1, 2, 3 of them here. There's 1, 2, 3 of them here, torqued to 50. The engine mount, the rear engine mount, which is really the transmission mount. 2 smaller bolts here, torqued to 28 Newton meters. 2 larger bolts here, which are 16 millimeters, torqued down to 50 Newton meters. And these guys are 13 millimeters, torqued to 28 Newton meters. Good. All right, next step. Okay, we cleaned up and put back this cross member. Torqued these down to 28 Newton meters. These are 13 millimeter bolts. Now we're going to put back the heat shields. With the heat shielding back in, the only thing left to do is to put in the cross member right over here, and then we should be in pretty good shape. And so that does it. We put this last crossbar on. I don't have the torque spec for this one. I just made these good and tight, nothing too crazy. And everything's back on. It's always nice when you have a job and there's no extra pieces left over at the end. That's always encouraging. I'm going to put back the plastic panels and then we'll take it for a test drive. So I thought I had everything all set up, and then I got a little bit of a surprise. I did more research and I realized that that center bearing is definitely broken. So, guess what? We get to make another video. A video about replacing the center bearing. I'm going to show you a picture and some part numbers of what I just ordered. I'm not going to drive the car. I'm going to leave it exactly where it is in its position. I get to take off the entire drive shaft, which is also going to mean that I get to take off the exhaust system, and we're going to do a whole video on that. We're going to replace that center bearing. Let me show you the part numbers. Went on to parts.com. Actually first went on to Mercedes WIS and found all the various part numbers that I need. This is the Mercedes drive shaft center support bearing, the rubber boot bearing, part number A211-410-0381. Got that from parts.com at a slight discount. Then as far as the bearing itself, you could get a rind bearing for like $9, but I'm just making a whole order on parts.com. And the part number there is A008-981-4325. That's the ball bearing. And the final part that you need is the dust boot, which is A202-411-0497. Was able to get all these parts on parts.com, so they'll come as original Mercedes parts for about 135 bucks. That should be sent over to me pretty soon. We're going to use a puller, a 3-leg puller, which I have, and then I'm going to have to fashion a certain pipe to be able to drive on this bearing. But we're going to go through all of that. I think it'll be an interesting video, and I'm just not going to drive the car. That's okay. It'll stay up on its mountings for about a week or so. We'll get this done next weekend, and it'll be a fun project to do. So stay tuned for yet the next part of the flex disc saga, which has now turned into the center bearing support saga. Thanks for watching.